Welcome, everyone, to the latest in the 11 Minutes Webcast series from Acrobatiq. For those of you who might not know us yet at Acrobatiq, we're a Carnegie Mellon University company. We partner with members of the higher ed community to improve online education. My name is Hal Turner. I'm the Director of Customer Support here. Today, Dr. Keith Hampson is going to discuss the fascinating and critical subject of design in digital higher education with you. If you have any questions for him during the talk, please post them in the questions field, and we'll take care of them as they come in. We'll answer them directly. They're not publicly displayed, so feel free to ask anything you like. At the end of the webcast, we'll provide you with more information on contacting Dr. Hampson and a link to the recording and ways to join the social media discussion on design. Thanks for being here. Now, on to Keith.
Hi, I'm Keith Hampson. Thank you so much for joining us. We've had a chance to write about design and how it relates to digital higher education a few times over the last, say, 2 or 3 weeks, and the response has been fantastic, very enthusiastic. So we're looking forward to talking about it with you again today. But before we dig in, a few notes. First, we're using the hashtags 11-minute webcast and course design for this brief talk. Feel free to use these to ask questions, make comments, and so forth, or you can simply follow us on Twitter at Acrobatiq. And I'd also like to remind you that we will be airing an interview with one of the legends of design, Donald Norman, in a few weeks. I'm looking forward to that conversation. I hope you'll join us. Now, design. First, let's start with a definition, because this is a notoriously vague term. By design, I'm referring to the category of work often associated with applied arts. People that work in design are industrial designers, graphic artists. They may do experience design or UX, user experience. They create images, video, websites, objects, including technology. But why are we talking about design? What has it got to do with digital higher education? My colleagues and I believe strongly that the skills and processes of the field of design are highly valuable to digital learning. We think design needs to be a bigger part of the conversation in digital higher education. Now, when we refer to design in the context of education, it inevitably and logically raises the issue of instructional design. What's the relationship? Now, instructional design is obviously an incredibly important facet of digital higher education. In fact, instructional design is actually one of the defining features of online education. The growth of one led to the growth of the other. So when we refer to design, are we talking about instructional design, or is this something else entirely? Well, yes and no. Yes, in that design and instructional design certainly overlap, but no, they're not the same things. Let me try to unpack that. Design offers a different set of strengths and practices that are often paid little attention in higher ed. First of all, design concerns itself with the emotional and social context of end users, not just the intellectual. Second, design is often called on to bring creativity and innovation to the table, to do something different, something better. And in our experience, this is not something that professionals in higher ed often allow themselves to do. They often leave creativity in the classroom, and when they move online, they become much more conservative in their instructional strategies. And I think that creativity, that innovation needs to find a way back into the process of creating online courses, and I think design can help us do that. Third, design takes a broader, more holistic approach to understanding the end users. Great design uses almost an ethnographic style of analysis to understand their users. And as the context for learning continues to diversify who's learning, where they're learning, what devices they're learning with, I think this is going to be increasingly helpful. Fourth, design understands the importance of aesthetics in communication and engagement with end users. And this is something we've paid very little attention to. Outside of education, the field of design has been growing very quickly for the last couple of decades, not just in volume, but in terms of the scope of responsibilities it has been asked to assume. There are a number of reasons for this growth, but two are particularly relevant to us here in education. First, it's been proposed that the rise of design during the past couple of decades owes much to the rapid pace of change that characterizes modern life. As Ray Kurzweil, inventor extraordinaire, has pointed out, the rate of change has increased. The time between invention and mass adoption of, for example, consumer technologies such as mobile phones, social networking, has dropped dramatically. Design then serves as a means of navigating, of making sense of this rapid pace of change. We use design to make these changes less difficult and more productive. A second reason is that design has been seen as a response to the rise of personal technology, particularly personal technologies that are screen-based. Now, the relevance of these two factors, these two explanations for the rise of design to digital higher education are quite obvious. First, with respect to the question of change and the pace of change. In higher education, the migration from the classroom environment to the internet is one of the most dramatic changes in the history of higher ed. This is an institution with deeply established roots and conventions in classroom education. The switch to online is no small step, and good design can make that transition more successful. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, this transition wasn't too hard. I think we've made that shift from the classroom to online. Well, I think we have, and I think we haven't. Online education is still quite awkward for faculty and students. We still dedicate a large amount of financial support to helping faculty and student make that migration from the classroom to online, providing them with a different set and additional resources. And of course, each institution has that requisite "this is how online education works" page on their website. But more significant than that, much of what we've done thus far in online education was done in order to minimize change. The differences between online and classroom-based courses was deliberately minimized. The learning management system, for example, was designed and subsequently very successful precisely because it didn't disrupt the traditional model of higher education, not because it was a huge step forward. It fit in to the existing model, and that existing model is based on the classroom model. But if we want to continue to move forward and do things that are far more effective to provide better learning experiences for students, we will not be mimicking the classroom, obviously. And this will require a stronger capacity for design from those behind these innovations. We will need design in order to move forward in more substantial ways. But the migration from the classroom is also a shift to a screen-based environment. The quality of a user's experience in a screen-based environment, laptops, smartphones, tablets, and so forth, is unusually dependent on the quality of the design. We've moved learning from an environment in which design played a very small role to one in which it plays a very large role. But we haven't made the necessary adjustments. A respect for the importance of design is one of the more important changes required. It's like the old saying, when you pick up one end of the stick, you pick up the other, necessarily. If we move to a screen-based environment, we necessarily pick up the need for, the requirement for design. If your institution has not yet deliberately sought to include design into the course and program design process, and you're starting more or less from scratch, here are a few basic steps that you can take that, if implemented with energy and commitment, can make a significant difference. Number one, learn more about your students. Great design is based on insights. Ask different questions about your students. Ask different people about your students. Yes, ask the students directly, but also ask the librarians, ask the registration services, ask student support. And based on your analysis, come up with a set of student profiles to guide your course design. Make these profiles as detailed as possible. Now, it's unlikely that you can do this for every course, and I wouldn't suggest it, but the institution can do this for all of its online learning and then share the results across all departments. Number two, hire a designer. Now, if this isn't possible and you're like most institutions and not tripping over bags of money, then you might consider turning to the students and faculty within your institution that have experience and skills with design and ask them for their involvement. Number three, add brainstorming to the course design process. For those parts of the course that are particularly tricky and or important, set aside some additional time to explore new ways for the students to learn. Pull together an interesting mix of people for this task and see what you can come up with. Make it fun. That's all the time we have for today's 11-minute webcast. But over the next couple of weeks, we'll release more resources on the subject of design. In the meantime, check out our blog for links to resources on design from a variety of sources. We've compiled, I think, a good starter list. And of course, thanks for listening.
And thank you too, Keith. I hope all of our attendees today will keep in mind that this 11-minute webcast is meant to be a launching point for a discussion of design. So please, get in touch and start a dialogue with us and with each other. As Keith mentioned, the Twitter hashtags relating to today's discussion are hashtag 11minute and hashtag course design. In addition to finding us using our Twitter handle, Acrobatiq, you can also find us at facebook.com/Acrobatiq, keeping in mind that Acrobatiq ends with the letter Q. Everyone attending today will receive a follow-up email with more resources, so check for that. We really appreciate that you spent this time with us, so please keep in touch.